Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Horn Call podcast. My name is James Bolden. I'm the publications editor for the International Horn Society and your host. My awesome guest today is Dr. Libby Ando, a horn player, a performer, a teacher. She's active in a lot of different musical areas. She's performed in the tri-state area of New Jersey. She's got a brass quintet that she formed with her colleagues called the Coda Brass. She's written a couple of different articles for the Horn Call looking at orchestral excerpts by women composers, excerpts that really ought to be in the standard repertoire of every horn player, and she's done a lot of really excellent work digging up the information and making these resources available to horn players everywhere. We have a really great conversation today talking about her musical journey, her path to where she is now, the various teachers she studied with, her experience and time working with marching band and drum corps. It's a really great conversation, and I was thinking the other day, it's amazing how fast the last several months have gone by. We actually recorded this interview back in August, and getting on towards the end of the year here in November. We're coming up on 2025, which will be the year that IHS 57 is held, of course, in June 2025 at James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I hope that we get a chance to meet and chat about the Horn Society, the Horn Call, and anything else you'd like to talk about. But without further delay, here's my conversation with Dr. Libby Ando. To continue with exactly what we were just talking about. So, by the way, welcome, and thanks so much for being here. And you were just telling us a little bit about yourself. Let's kind of reverse engineer it. So tell us what you're doing right now, and I hear big congratulations are in order. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now, and then we'll kind of loop back and kind of get the story of how you got to where you are.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm a little awestruck right now. And so this is really exciting. But yeah, so this summer, I finally finished all of my requirements to be Dr. Ando, to achieve my DMA, which was really good. And I'm so spoiled that could happen, because I feel like the stars really need to align for, your master's to happen. And then especially for your DMA to happen. It's like getting, get where to live, where the teachers, the school environment, the funding. So I'm so thankful I was able to be in school, and I'm also very thankful that it's concluded.
I bet. Yeah, it is such a good feeling, I'm sure.
Yeah. So right now, obviously, it's like my dream to be a university professor. Obviously, you have to be a little bit patient and cultivate your CV and all of your resources for that. So in the process of doing that now, I've been freelancing around South Jersey and Philly and North Jersey too. They're sort of separate regions, but that's been a blast. And I currently work with the Rowan University Marching Band as their brass caption head. This will be our second year having a band, and my second year working with them as a college band. So that's been really cool. I currently play with this awesome brass quintet that we started, Coda Brass, which has just been like a huge blessing. I'm like so thankful for those girls. We're an all-woman brass quintet, and founded by ourselves. So we're doing so much legwork, and that's been really eye-opening. But in general, yeah, I feel like I'm a little bit like a chicken with my head cut off doing a lot of things. But I think that's sort of the nature of a lot of options in music too. So I'm really thankful to have so many interesting things happening. It's like, what day is it? It's August 16th. So we're like in the midst of, I just got off drum corps tour with the Crossmen, and then we're going into band camp season. So I've been working with some high schools in the area, but then really gearing up for Rowan, because that's like just a huge extravaganza.
Right,
yeah, a little bit chaotic in a good way, but just also, yeah, such a blast. Yeah.
So did you grow up in that part of the country?
Yes, I did. I'm like super spoiled. I stayed in the like tri-state area for all of my schooling. Like I went to Rowan for undergrad before they had a band. And my horn teacher was Lyndsie She's just amazing. And then I went to Westchester with Liz Pfaffle, who is also, yeah, it's so rare to stay in such a small location for 3 schools. But I did, and I'm really thankful for that. And I grew up around here, which South Jersey is really cool. New Jersey gets somewhat of a bad rap. I don't know if you know any stereotypes, but I actually think it's a great part of the country to live because it's really diverse. That you can be at places with a lot of people, or you can be right in nature, like within 15 minutes. And there's a lot of cool music around, a lot of amazing performances to see, but also take part in. So I know you have to be ready to move to take college positions, and I know I've been already lucky to stay in the same spot, but I'm hoping maybe I can stay around here. Who knows though?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that are out of your control. And then, I try to remind myself, because it's easy to, when you think about all the variables and all the things going on, you just kind of have to focus on the things that only you can do. And then everything else it's not in your hands. It's kind of like an audition, right? You have zero control over who shows up the audition, how they play, what the temperature of the room is like, and all that stuff. And it's just pointless worrying about it, because that's just excess, stuff in your brain. But that's much easier said than done. But I do want to mention, so Rowan University, I went to a conference there several years ago. It was the International Women's Brass Conference in Glassboro. It's an amazing campus. It's beautiful. It's like what you were saying. People have this concept of the Northeast as being sort of very dense and very urban and lots of cities, and that's true. But there's like lots of pastures and beautiful, like some rolling countryside, depending on where you are in that part of the country.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel, especially about that area. And I was at that conference too. I was so lucky that Lyndsie we had IWBC there, and that was like, we got to help out as the horn studio. We also had like a horn workshop there, the Northeast Horn Workshop at one point. And getting to see that stuff behind the scenes, and then like, getting to volunteer and also help facilitate, but also there's like these amazing brass, like heavy hitters just walking around like normal people. It was like, can you walk Abby Conant to her practice room? And I'm like, yes, like, oh my God. Or like, let's watch Genghis Barbie. Like, what the heck? Like, life is, that was like just such a blast. So I'm so glad you like the campus too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's very, very nice place. So I guess stepping back a little bit from that, I'm always interested in how people. So did you know when you were in high school that you wanted to major in music performance in college, or did you get a good scholarship and that was kind of the decision to give it a shot?
Yeah, I had a few things I was going between in high school. I actually felt like I was kind of late settling on the horn. I started horn, like I started on trumpet originally, which I still do like trumpet a little bit, if I'm allowed to say that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I started on trumpet, and then, my band director sort of saw that I was having some success on trumpet, guided me towards horn. But of course, the horn was like way squirrelier, way like a lot of tricky things were happening, not as straightforward. And when I got to high school, I was in my high school musical experience was awesome because our band director made one of those programs where I realized I could be in the band room like every day of the week doing something different. Like, sure, yeah, play third trumpet in jazz band. Okay. Oh, and you'll let me play marimba for percussion ensemble, and then I'm going to do some cymbals, and then for marching band, I'll do mellophone. So I was just trying to be like a sponge mode, and I'm sure it got annoying, but he was always very encouraging, and that I think really cultivated this like overall sense, like this overall love of music. And then as that's happening, out of all those things, horn was the tricky one. And I had to work a lot at it. But then, and at first I kind of hated my band director for kept nudging me back to it. But now I'm so thankful because, it was a little more struggle at first and not as natural, but that's like my instrument now, we were a really big marching band school. So that like my first year, we like won nationals, and that was like crazy. And, you play a mellophone for marching band, which is kind of like a silly made up instrument that I still love, but it's a lot easier than horn.
You could scream on a mellophone. Yeah, for sure.
100%. And like, no, it's like blowing across a Gatorade bottle. It's like so nice.
Yeah, descant horn, basically. Just wrap,
right?
just wrap differently. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, oh, obviously I don't get to play mellow much anymore. I get to play a little tenor horn, which like mellow helped with, but it was like junior into senior year where I was really like, okay, like I'm not always being defeated by the horn. Like I'm getting better. That's good. I finally was able to take some lessons with actually the choir teacher from my middle school was a horn player. So
oh, great. Yeah.
And I was like painfully shy. So having her as my first horn teacher, like, thank goodness, because play in front of someone was like really hard for some reason at that point. And then, you know, junior and a senior year, I was kind of thinking like maybe history or psychology. And then I just tried to imagine my future not sinking all of my energy into music. And that felt like not the right idea. So even now it still feels like I approached the horn a little bit late. Like some people are like, oh, when I first tried horn. And sometimes I wish like, oh, I wish I had just picked this from the beginning. But also I'm just, you know, you can't control your path. And I'm so glad I had all those experiences because maybe I wouldn't have come back to horn and really settled on it had that not been the case. Sorry, kind of long-winded, but
no, absolutely. No, that's great. And so at some point in your high school career, you decided like, okay, I want to audition for college music programs and be a music major. Was that a tough conversation with your parents / guardians / people at home? Or was it mostly like, okay, maybe we don't 100% get this, but we support you? Or what was that like?
Yeah. I mean, my parents have always, they're not necessarily musical, but always really supportive. I think like my dad played a little guitar and my mom played clarinet in high school, but I think they kind of knew beforehand, like that I was going to land on it. So they weren't so surprised. And actually, I did undergrad as a music ed major, which my mom was a kindergarten and first grade teacher my whole life. So it felt like I kind of understood education. And I love teaching. I still have a huge appreciation for all of my teachers and a huge appreciation for when I am like trusted to teach, I guess. It's really kind of a sacred, weird thing, but like, yeah, they were pretty supportive. And luckily, like, you know, Rowan had some scholarships, which was helpful. I had like some SAT scores, which I don't even know if they count those anymore. But so it made it like feasible to go. And I visited, and then I just really clicked with Lyndsie, and I also clicked with the head of brass there, Brian Appleby-Weinberg. He was like, read the telecode, and I was like voracious, like, tell me how to be better, please. So yeah. So I was lucky that they were supportive. And I think I live about 45 minutes. I still live with my parents, actually. Thankfully, I'm glad that they let me do that. But it was like just far enough away. They weren't going to be popping in, but also I could have some independence. It's really close to Philadelphia too, which is nice.
Yeah, I actually have a relative that lives in Philadelphia. And so I was able to go down and visit them when I was up there for that conference. So it was like, I was thinking, you know, I don't have a great head for like geography and distances and stuff. So I was thinking like, oh, Philadelphia is really far away from New Jersey, but I looked it up on the map. I was like, oh, that's an easy drive. I can go down there and visit my relative.
Right? Yeah, it's super accessible, which is great.
And then, so what was the transition like from undergrad to choosing a grad program?
Yeah. So I was when I first started at Rowan, it's so interesting, like circling back, because like I was there for undergrad, no marching band. Now I'm there for the marching band. So I'm always joking with students that it's like my first years of college band too.
You get to be a freshman again.
Exactly. I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I've done so many years of drum corps, which is a slightly different background. It's like, even when you're in a fun drum corps, it's a little bit more serious, and I find myself being too serious. I'm like, this is college band. Can we like, let's focus, you know? But there wasn't a lot of horn majors when I first started. So I got to play in like everything, which was good because, again, in high school, I was like doing too much to zero in on any horn rep, like except for band pieces. And then also Lyndsie, there's like two really great youth orchestras in the city. There's Philadelphia Sinfonia and there's Philly Youth Orchestra. And I auditioned for both of them, and I got into Philly Youth Orchestra, and like they were playing like Till and Mahler 5.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, the planets. So even though it was like a youth orchestra, I joined an undergrad, and I was just trying to soak up all this rep. And then at the end of undergrad, I'm like thinking, I love teaching. I was like in student teaching. I love teaching. I love playing horn. Maybe I'll be a band director. How does this shake out? What's future? That felt very pivotal. But I had heard that there was an assistantship opening up at Westchester University. And with Liz, who I didn't know at the time. I had only heard of it. And I had had a lot of teachers that I knew, actually mostly through corps, like drum corps, that had went to Westchester. And they were a really big band school. And so, yeah, I kind of auditioned, and I think I auditioned and I played for Liz, and she is so cool. And she was like, okay, sounds good. What do you want to work on first? And like, just blew my mind because.
Oh, fantastic. That's great.
Exactly. And then, so yeah, I was at student teaching when I got the news that I had gotten in. And so, yeah, that's sort of how that went. That's why it feels like the stars aligning, because it feels like I could have gone either way and been really excited for either choice. But I do that. My master's was like a really big time of growth for me. So I'm really glad I chose that option, and glad I was able to continue going through school. Because, a lot of things have to fall into place. So.
It's very expensive these days. Life is expensive, but life plus schooling is, it's not getting any cheaper. So that that's excellent that it worked out. Now, I don't know as much about Westchester University. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So that is like, if we're in South Jersey, that's like an hour to the other side of Philly. Sort of a smaller school. It's a great music program, but a little bit smaller, like a state school. And they have a crazy marching band, which is interesting. I wasn't really involved with a band there when I was there, and they have a great wind ensemble program and a great orchestra program. Oh my gosh, the conductor of the orchestra was a horn player too, which was, and he was just a really kind man who was very encouraging. So yeah, and the music building is in Swope, which is shaped like a piano, which is really cool.
Oh, okay.
All of the practice rooms are kind of slightly different sizes to be like around. Yeah, but
so like seen from the air, it would look like the shape of a piano then? Okay.
Yes.
That's it. I did not know that. Yeah. That's got to be pretty rare, right? There can't be that many music buildings. Was there a reason they did it that way?
There's not many that I know of. And part of, you go back and forth between being like, this is so cool, and being like, this is interesting. I think they had a much older building, and that had been a sort of newer one since maybe the 2010s. Okay. But I haven't met a building that's the shape of a piano since then.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at the picture online now. That is really interesting. Okay, yeah, so it's got the curves. Huh. Oh, that's beautiful inside. That's really pretty.
Yeah, I was really spoiled. Well, and Westchester itself as a town is really sweet and cute. There's all these like little shops, and well, for me, Rutgers is the music school isn't that big, but it's the biggest school I went to. I think I'm kind of shy. I think it was important for me to go to sort of smaller schools and get my footing, because I felt like that was important. So Westchester was like a great environment for that. And there was actually another grad student there too. So we would, feed off each other's energy and listen to each other. And actually the whole studio there, I'm still friends with a lot of them, because it was just a good time.
Grad school is a very special time because you're super busy, but you're also able to focus in because you're not taking math class and English class and, those kinds of things. So it's a chance to really kind of, college is about figuring out who you are in a lot of ways, but grad school is like figuring out your career a little bit more than you're able to as an undergrad. I mean, unless you're very lucky, like some people just are like laser focused and have it all together when they come out of undergrad. But I personally was not that way at all. I had a very vague notion. I had the vaguest of notions of at some point in the far flung future, I might like to do this. And then yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And because it's like the more you learn, the more like your opinions about what you might want to do, like you get more information. Yeah, and part of you is like, oh God, I'm going to spend all this time like getting really specialized and hopefully I'm good enough at the end. Cause I think school is like a balance of always receiving feedback and kind of always, which is important. But then also, in some ways it's kind of artificial because very rarely in life are you so zoomed into one microcosm of people and you're always performing with the same people. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how you felt. It was like, I'm so thankful to be specializing more, but there was also a kind of underlying fear there. Like, oh my God, I'm choosing horn really hard, right?
Well, looking back on it, because it's been a minute since I was in school, and looking back on it and what I try to tell my students that have the same concerns, and they're absolutely legitimate concerns, but the skills you are learning while you're putting together a really difficult recital, while you're trying to coax all of your friends and colleagues in a chamber group to, hey, can we agree on a rehearsal time? Or when you're trying to navigate different personalities, and there's a lot of different personalities in the arts. Those are skills that you're going to take with you into whatever you do. If you go work for, a startup, or if you go work in an office somewhere, or if you are just freelance at whatever, I think, it's hard to quantify as the difficult thing because take for instance, something in the hard sciences where you come out with that degree that you are able to do that thing. And the company says, well, we need you to do this thing. And you go do that thing. That's one way to do college. And there's nothing wrong with that. But then there's the less concrete things. But I think they're both extremely valuable. At least that's been my perspective.
No, that's very wise. Yeah. And we also, like you said, like, we don't know how life will unfold. So it's like, you just develop and you're in the now and you're just going and you're taking the right next step or you're trying to. And yeah.
Yeah. So did you go straight from grad school at Westchester to Rutgers, or did you have some time in between?
Yeah, I went straight from undergrad into my master's. And then at my master's, I finished my master's, but I still was like, I feel like I'm not necessarily ready for auditions. Mm-hmm. So I took like one extra year where I was, I like rented a room and I was practicing a bunch and I was just still taking lessons with Liz, which was amazing, just to get, and they still let me be in ensembles, which was very kind.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I'm really lucky. So that was just like almost just an extra year over top, and that I did my auditions, and that year was actually 2020.
So something big happened that year.
Yeah, something big, some collective trauma to our society. Yeah. So, it was so weird. I only auditioned like two places. I which is rare as well, I guess. I auditioned at George Mason because they're like a really good research school, and they also have a lot going on with marching band. And then Rutgers because I had known about Leelanee, and I'd been reading like any interview she did and any bio she did, and I was like, oh wow, I think I would really click with her as a teacher. But I had to meet her first. Yeah, so just a little gap year there, and then COVID happened, so we all went away, and then my first year of DMA was on Zoom school, which part of me like feels that loss, but part of me is like thankful because that actually made it more feasible to do school. So I have really mixed feelings about that year specifically. Yeah, it was also just kind of weird. I was packing up my stuff in like the grad assistant office at Westchester and getting all these etude books, and I got the email that I got in to Rutgers, and even though that was like a really happy moment, I like burst into tears, and then I called Liz, and then she's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, oh, I got it. And like as I'm standing in this abandoned like ghost town building, but
right, yeah.
I know.
What a weird time for everybody.
Right? I mean, yeah, I'm not sure. Like, what did your school do? Zoom school during that time? Did you have to do online lessons?
Yeah, I mean, everywhere was different, and it's still this way today, depending on what you're talking about politically or socially or whatever. Everything varies. So yeah, we did some stuff, and luckily we were able to transition back into something that looked more normal at a certain point. I mean, we all kind of did what we had to do, especially like I remember it was right before, the hammer came down where it was like all online. I'd done like a recital with a couple of my colleagues, and then like a week or so later, was when everything kind of came to a halt in March. And, I think for the most part, everybody was really resilient. I mean, faculty, students, administration, because you have to think about like trying to figure out, well, how do you take thousands of people who are living on campus and then send them all home and figure out how they're going to get any kind of education out of it?
Yeah, it's still otherworldly to think that we went through something like that,
It's been, it's that, and that it's been, 4+ years. It went by quite quickly. And again, being older, it seems like less time to me, but those people that were in like elementary school or transitioning from high school to college, such a important time in your life, and then having to deal with all of the stress on top of that. So, I think we're all kind of the sum of our experiences. So I think while I wouldn't wish that on anybody, I think they're going to have a strength that comes from having to deal with that. Every generation has sort of their thing that like defined their generation, or multiple things sometimes. So I think for a certain group of people, that's going to be like, okay, that's kind of a defining moment.
Yeah. I love that framing of it though, because it is going to be hard moments are good chances to cultivate resilience. So yeah, like some people think like, oh, that generation, they lost this valuable time. But like you said, that was, it was a character building moment. And yeah, I do feel like even just like the students I work with, like pre-COVID versus post-COVID, like the post-COVID students are a lot more, I don't even know if this is the right way, like sensitive, like there's an empathy there for each other that I don't know if even like a few years older, that like my generation, I don't know if we cultivated that as hard, but that's just me thinking. I'm not sure if that's definitely not everyone's experience.
Well, and I think there's something to be said for, everybody was just kind of grinding away in 2019. And then all of a sudden in March of 2020 or in February, depending on where you were, everything just stopped like hard for weeks in some places, months in others. Somebody was telling me they teach at like a big research campus, and they said they were fully closed for like, it was either a year and a half or 2 years, because it's a huge campus. They just couldn't let all those people back on at the same time. It was too risky. And so just imagining that of it, just kind of live performances being done for a certain amount of time is difficult to conceive it, even this close to after it happened. So.
Right. Yeah, I played on my one friend's recital at Westchester. They had sort of like a hybrid setup. I mean, I did a recorded recital, which was crazy during that time, but we were going to do their recital because there's slightly different rules. And I was like going back to play on it. And we get there and there's these huge glass dividers between everyone. It's like, okay, cool. And then like play with your mask, Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And bell covers, those were a thing. Yeah.
I really loved the debate on bell covers because,
oh my goodness, yeah,
because it's like so brass specific. Like, no, like it's not. But it was just such a funny time. Oh my god, I'm so glad we're out of that. Phew.
Yes, yeah, it certainly made me thankful for the freedoms that we have and the things we get to do. Okay, so I have a couple of different lines of questioning, but I don't want to go in too many different directions. But I promise there's a method to this madness. So the first thing I have to ask is, because I first met Leelanee when she was a freshman in college, and I've actually never seen her teach, and like, I've seen her in like master classes and stuff. What was it like studying with her?
I'm so spoiled. It was amazing. I think she takes some of her inspiration from Doug Hill's approach of, kind of, here's a collection of stuff and, take this and run with it and come back to me, because it's, she's not really prescriptive. She's way more organic. She'll let you sort of choose your own adventure, and then she'll run with you in that direction, which I really appreciate. Because, there's so much with playing that I had to work on and like developing my sound, and she was so encouraging with that. But then there's also all the like the emotional stuff of, making your place, or like with my research, like she was the most encouraging person. Like, no, please get this out there. Like, actually put this out there. Like, it's important. No one's gonna stand up and refute what you're saying or accuse you of dethroning Strauss or something like that. Like, it's going to be okay. I don't know what everyone's experience with their teachers like, but I really appreciated she was very honest and always transparent about her preparation for stuff. Like, at one point she got called to play at the Met, and it was like, she was like, I did what anyone would do. I got the video from the Met online and I played along with it and I had the score. And I think that is just, and there was times we practiced, like, carrying yourself for a recital. Like, how do you present yourself when you're not playing on stage? I just think the fact that she was that comprehensive with like whole person horn playing, that was very helpful for me. And then of course, like the way she talks in lessons, one, she's like an expert practicer. So if you're struggling with something, she can think of 3 ways on the spot to like break it down. Like, which note are we leaning towards? How are you going to phrase to that? Can you do it this way? Can you play it in 8th notes? Can you can you play it backwards? And just when she models something and just like sitting there in her sound. At one point she was talking to me about how every note is sort of a 3D object. And we were working on those Wendell Haas Bach cello suites.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, which, they're amazing, but like, what an undertaking.
Well, and they sit in that register, that muddy, amorphous register for pretty much everybody, unless you just really work on it.
There's so much about phrasing that and having like a through line, and you can't just play all the notes like they're monotone. You have to lean and inflect. And wow, there was like a whole semester where she was walking me through that, and it was like, finally now I'm like, oh my God, I think I understand phrase, and I understand that layer beyond the notes on the page, which I don't know how she taught that to me, but like she did, so I'm just, and she always jokes like, once you have a teacher, you have like a lifetime subscription. So she totally, I can always text her, and she'll always text me when I'm at like conferences and be like, I'm so proud of you. And she actually played a transcription of mine at IHS 56.
I know. I was at that concert. Yeah.
Oh,
the cello concerto, right? Yeah.
Cello Sonata. Yeah. And Ethel Smyth has a piece for horn, violin, and piano too, but I transcribed the sonata so I could just play it with my friend on a recital. Because for my lecture recital, I had to do like a big piece instead of just playing the excerpts, which I had been doing. And like, what? Like, that is just so, like, the fact that she did that, and that just really encouraging. And so, yeah, I obviously can't say enough wonderful things about her. And then, to see her perform just every time, it's like a shot of endorphins, because she's just so inspiring. And she's such a go-getter. Like, she's just such a go-getter. I remember like reading her New York Phil bio when I was like, deciding to go. And then I'd been like kind of walking. I lived in Philly at the time, and there was like this mural, and it was like, leap and the net appears. And sometimes I think about that quote with her, like, leap and the net appears, because she's like so brave, and she's like, no, put yourself out there and it's gonna work out. Like, you can't even fail if you don't put yourself out there. And and of course we all have failure moments. Like, one is gonna happen at some point, but I can't thank her enough for all of that encouragement. It really, like, awesome. Yeah, sorry, she's just all of it.
No, that's great. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because that's a side of her I wasn't necessarily able to see when we were overlapped a little bit at the University of Wisconsin. But speaking of your research, so you've written 2 articles now for the Horn Call, both which are really great. Tell us a little bit about, so give me the elevator speech, I guess, about your research.
So yeah, my research for my dissertation is about orchestral excerpts by women. There is a future where we won't have to delineate orchestral excerpts by women, and it'll just be excerpts, and all of them will be included. But at this point, it feels a little bit timely to start to have more of us be familiar with excerpts by people from a variety of identities. Even though orchestral music was born in a kind of homogenous way, and so much symphonic music is German, and it's Strauss and it's Brahms, to me, it's really important that we play music from a variety of people, especially because I think for the longest time, I feel embarrassed saying this, but I think for a long time I didn't even notice there weren't female composers on my stand. It wasn't until grad school where I started being like, oh, we're playing a piece by a woman. Why is that an anomaly? And then I also had a lot of misconceptions about that.
Well, you only know what you know, right?
Exactly.
So it's, I mean, until someone like you does the research and does the work and makes people aware of it, then I mean, you can't be responsible if you don't know it. I mean, it's sort of like, to me, that's okay, because there's plenty of things that everybody doesn't know. But if it's like willfully ignoring something, even though now you've been made aware of this, are you still going to choose to ignore it?
Right. No, that's a great point. And so many people are doing the same type of thing, and it's a group effort, obviously, and it's tricky because I think there's like, in some days I like am thinking about it, I want to know as much about these composers. So the people I centered on for my dissertation, and it's expanding, and I tried to keep it kind of, was Alice Mary Smith, or also known as Alice Mary Meadows White. She was a British composer, sort of in the classical to romantic era. And then Augusta Holmès, who's going to be in one of the Horn Call articles. And she was born in Ireland, but moved to France and lived in Paris. And she was just a very flamboyant, like larger than life, like she really lived life loud. And then Amy Beach, who's probably the most familiar one, American composer, and Ethel Smyth as well. And Ethel Smyth is sort of the glue because she's the most recent, and she was like a prolific author as well. So I drew a lot from stuff she had written about Augusta Holmès, about being a woman composer for my dissertation, which was cool. Sorry, I think I lost my train of thought at the end there.
No, that's fine. So I guess, so now that you're done with the degree, will there be maybe like an excerpt book at some point forthcoming, or maybe a website or something where people can just kind of go and get some of this information?
I have a website that's almost ready to go. I worry a little bit because I'm saying something that's timely. We do need music by everyone, but I'm also worried that people think I'm like trying to say something about the established excerpts. And I have a website that's almost ready, but I just get so, well, it's half that and half like, I don't want to take credit for these awesome composers. I just want them to be out there. So part of it feels like if I put them on a website, then it's associated with me. And I know like the articles are associated with me, and I know I am researching, but does that make sense at all?
Sure. Well, I can't speak to your particular area of research, but I will just say you're never going to please everyone. And if at the end of the day you are satisfied with what you are contributing and you feel like you are contributing, then what more can you do? That's that thing of like, we're all, at least it seems like to me, in a lot of cases, we have to defend what we do in the arts to show people that it has value, and it's somewhat, people are only concerned with the dollars and cents or what have you, but there's more to life than that. I mean, obviously you have to have money to live. That's that period. If you don't have any money, then that's problem number one. You have to there's all kinds of reasons and things for that. But okay, beyond that, what are we leaving behind? What are we leaving to future generations, and all that kind of big picture stuff. So I'll speak much more frankly off once we stop recording. But yeah, so that's the that's the official line for sure. So just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, that was something that Doug Hill told me. It was I think it was maybe like right after I took my comps or something for my doctorate, and it was something to the effect of just keep being productive. And it wasn't like keep doing this one thing or go this direction, because there's no way no one's going to be able to predict what path is going to be interesting to you or what areas are going to be interesting to you. But I think about that a lot. It's like just keep being productive, just keep doing things and meeting people and doing research and all that stuff. So that's really all you could do.
No, you're so right. And I think I have sent out the presentations before, and I like always send out an email list after I do a conference, because and people are so have been. And of course, when I meet that person who's not supportive, I just need to let it roll off. But yeah, no, that's been something that I kept going back and forth on, is the website. So maybe with this encouragement, I'll click publish and finally have them up. And I don't want people to think I'm taking credit, right? This music's awesome. And I'm just a fan of it. I'm just like so excited to share cool horn music, because that's what we're all into. Like, yeah.
Well, absolutely. And then, of course, the next thing is like, where do people get recordings of these things, or are there YouTube videos of these pieces being performed? Because I think I remember talking to Leelanee about this a bit when we did her podcast. It's only going to take one, maybe two or three like major orchestras choosing a piece from an underrepresented composer and putting it on an audition list. And then, okay, now that dam has broken, there'll be a trickle down effect, right? Regional orchestras will start programming those pieces, and then those will show up on audition lists. And then, people will say, well, okay, I need to learn this piece. Where'd I get the part? Where'd I get the recording? And that's just how the whole thing has been built so far, right? Like, some of these pieces that are on audition lists, there's not really anything special about them, right? Even if they're by a, quote, famous composer, some of them are not super great pieces, right? There's something about that horn part that was interesting to someone at some point, and they thought to use it on an audition, and it was influential, and now other places are using it for auditions. So it's like that thing of when you look at an audition list, you're like, why is that on there? Or what are they trying to figure out with this particular selection? Did a horn player have a bad night on that piece at one point, and now the conductor thinks it's hard? Or so.
No, you're so right. Yeah. And like, I feel that way too. Like, and that's one thing Leelanee said too. Like, I'd be like, is this a worthy horn excerpt? And she's like, yeah, of course. Or I'm like, is this too short or too long? And it's like, but she said something to the effect of that. Well, and it's interesting because that's how we get favorite pieces too, right? So, like, the canon kind of affirms itself because you hear Beethoven and every orchestra plays Beethoven, and your parents and your grandparents know Beethoven, and he's talked about all the time as like this mystical figure. And it's self-affirming. Oh my God, you got to hear Beethoven 5. It's transcendent. Oh my God. Because those are a lot of the pieces that are most available. And there are, like, I love Beethoven too, but there's so much great music out there. I feel like I'm not going to get to all of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, but that's the best thing in terms of research is you're creating a link in a chain, right? That someone after you will come along and want to pick up and do more stuff, and they'll have your documents and all of the things that you've done to pick up. So that's kind of the cool thing about it. Otherwise, it's really lonely work. Just otherwise, if you think about it, it's like practicing is super lonely too. Like, you're just in a room by yourself, and so you kind of if you don't have little motivations to kind of keep you engaged and stuff, then it does get kind of dreary after a while.
Yeah. And like the point, I love, the point of practicing is to share your craft with others too, or one of the points.
Right. Yeah.
Wow, that's like a great comparison.
That's thank you for sharing all that stuff. I do have I have two more questions if you have time.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Oh, sure. So tell me a little bit about your involvement with drum corps, and as it's called, I got to get this right, the pageantry arts.
But nice.
I don't know. So I will say opinions vary on drum corps. And 100%. Me personally, I was never involved with the activity, but I know enough amazing musicians that have done it and that speak highly of it that I can't bash it. There's just no way. There's a right way to do things, and then there's the other ways to do things, right? So if it instills good musicianship, if it's done in a supportive way, and the people that do it seem to be getting what they want out of it, then I have no complaints.
100%. Well, yeah, there are lots of opinions about drum corps, and I appreciate you saying that. I think some of them, are warranted. Everyone's opinion is warranted. Drum corps is like very crazy. And yeah, so actually the head of brass at my teachers have always been super encouraging, which is like, wow, I'm like really spoiled. Lyndsie was like, yeah, go run around with a mellophone. I think it'll help your air support. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, in the years before I joined, so I started marching around 2011. Well, before then, and maybe then, it was kind of common to have some less than stellar pedagogy. There were places with great pedagogy, but I think a lot of teachers had a complaint that like, you're playing for like 6 hours a day, and it's really extenuating, and you're in the sun, and you're building bad habits. So I do understand the historic, like, kind of, oh God, drum corps, oh God, marching band sounds, but wow, for me, that was where I really learned to perform it was really where I got an understanding of fundamentals. You learn a lot about yourself as a person because it's kind of an absurd, surreal experience. You're like, you sleep on a tour bus with like 150 of your friends, and then you go and you play this like weird tube that is not a French horn. It's like a weird mellophone. Running around the fields, the pageantry arts, it used to be very militaristic. Now it's going towards, it's way more indoor percussion and indoor guard influenced, which is very artsy.
And like now, theatrical component, yeah.
Yeah, there is. So, and I've been lucky enough that you can only march till you're 21. So I marched 5 years and then I aged out, and then I've been teaching since then. And like, that has been an amazing experience because I love running around in the sun in front of the mellows. I love just like sticking my head in their bells and like, I love like seeing their growth over the summer. And, not all of them are even music majors. Some of them are like genius engineers who do this as a hobby. And there's like nothing like the synergy of like all of these people coming together and making this production, because they really are productions now. And just, I feel so thankful and honored every time I'm in front of them, because it's like, they're doing stuff I could never do. They'll be like running around, like tossing their horns and like jumping over stuff and doing chasses and their airtime. And like, I'm like, wow, I would like march like straight leg and like for 16 counts. And, but it's just made me such a better teacher and taught me how to think on my feet. And because also like, you're kind of with them day after day. And they're like, for mellophones, there's like 16 of them. You have to have a lot of tools in the belt for stuff that might be happening, I guess. So I'm really thankful for all that experience of learning that. And I try to be, and no one's perfect, I try to be the exact teacher I would have wanted to have, and always treat the members with respect and always lift them up and see them as people. And, it is serious, but it's not. It's also just bands. Like your humanness is more important than band always. And drum corps is a little absurd, so you have to laugh sometimes.
It is an intense activity for a lot of different reasons. I mean, the fact that they're putting on this production and they're going to take it on the road, and it all has to be memorized, and
Yeah, and the logistics play a huge role. The bus can break down, or the equipment truck isn't here. I fell and tossed my mellophone, and now it looks crumpled. Like, oh my gosh. And like, a lot of times I'm just really mindful, but then sometimes I like come to in like the middle of a field in Kansas, and I'm like, what are we doing? I'm like yelling at these guys and hitting a block at them, but not actually yelling, but maybe speaking with some projection.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, but what good training though for just being able to persevere and being able to perform under less than ideal circumstances and all of those things.
They are amazing. Yeah, they're really resilient.
That's great. And then, so thank you for sharing that, by the way. And then I do want to let's kind of talk about your brass quintet, Coda Brass. How did you all meet? And is there a certain kind of repertoire that you gravitate towards as a quintet, and all of that kind of stuff for people that I hope I'm crediting this person correctly, that someone can write in if I'm doing it wrong. I believe it was David Jolly. It was at a master class one point, and he said something to the effect of, chamber music will feed your musical soul. Because, when you're in a big ensemble, that's fun to play big pieces and all of that good stuff, but you're kind of a tiny cog in a big machine, unless you have a solo, and no one has a solo the entire time. So, but in a chamber group, everything is a solo. Everybody's part is a solo, and you get to make musical decisions together. And then there's just a sort of, I guess, self-actuation that comes from being in a chamber group. That's what I gathered from that quote. And I have that, and this was 20 some plus years ago that I heard that, and it still resonates with me today. So
that's amazing. There is a lot of self-actuation. Yeah, it's like, so we're an all-in brass quintet, Coda Brass. That's a joke about like not wanting to take repeats, going straight to the coda.
Names are the hardest thing. The hardest thing about a chamber group is coming up with the name.
Oh my God, it is brutal. If you're starting a group, you should set aside like 2 months where you all ruminate and you look at like street signs and maps and like think about local attractions. And yeah. And so So one of the trumpet players, we're all from New Jersey. We're kind of split between North and South Jersey. So that makes rehearsing really fun because sometimes we'll go up there, sometimes we'll be down here. I went to school with one of the trumpet players, Bonnie. Like I think she had came into Rowan as I was leaving, and we did our masters, and she also did a little bit of drum corps as well. And so she had been wanting to start a quintet for a while, and we knew our friend Paige from brass bands. And then, yeah, Bonnie was kind of the glue at first. And then our friend Megan, we have a euphonium player, which is great. She can double on trombone, but that's like a really fun sound to blend with.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And then my friend Gigi on tuba. And so we weren't like preformed. It was sort of like a little locus, and then we became five. And then, we sort of set some intentions because we're like starting a group and we're all girls, and that, it shouldn't necessarily be a statement, but that was really important to us because we feel like it's important to represent female musicians. Representations, like from my experience, like when I was little, seeing women brass players, that really changed something in my brain. And but we started from the ground up, and we like reached out for gigs, and we like finally got some gigs, and then and then we have these, like, for the longest time we were meeting weekly for like admin meetings, like how are we reaching out to people, what are we doing, what kind of rep do we want to play. For now we've been playing mostly like lighter type rep, but we're really looking to do obviously pieces by women and underrepresented composers, women and non-binary composers. We did a recital at the Newark Public Library, and we got to premiere a piece by our friend Julianne, and called Color Fabric Mood, which was like, that was a blast. And we're lining stuff up for this year too, which has been, it's cool because we're learning how to be musicians together, and the rehearsals themselves are very gratifying to make music like that. But it's also like the camaraderie and the community that we feel is also very gratifying, because it's like, oh, we're learning how to kind of be business people as well. Like, we need to start a bank account. We need to be professional in communication. We need to, and so much stuff I would never have thought of, but I'm so thankful. It's been such a blast. And I think it takes a while for stuff like this to start off. And at times it feels so stagnant, but actually it's been really worth it to have it develop organically and have more stuff just trickle down the pike, and then feel like we're getting more roots in,
That's awesome. So, would you have any advice for like maybe students who are listening to this who are interested in chamber music, and some students, depending on where they are put into a chamber group, and it's like, okay, we're with these people, we're not sure why we're together, but we're told we have to do a quintet piece on the student recital or something. But aside from that, any tips or advice for people who want to put together their own chamber group?
Wow. I think it's always important to be with people that you can get along with. Obviously, that makes the musical part that much better. And I think for me, there's definitely an element of like letting and like trust, because I feel like sometimes you sit down in a chamber group and you're like, oh goodness, like I want to sound good. But once I switched my brain to be like, I want to contribute and I want to make music with these people, that eased up a lot for me. I think for young students, like it can be kind of crazy because, you learn big ensemble rep. It's hard to like even know what like brass quintet rep or woodwind quintet rep until you're in that group. But definitely starting your listening off, and just, you could even start small and just play like duets with someone. And that's a skill to even learn to do that with someone and learn to react musically. But it really does feel like a different type of communication. And like, whereas first, like when coda rehearsals felt like, oh, I'm learning everyone's thing. Now, like when Megan does something, I know what's about to happen. When like, like I know how Bonnie's going to play that. I know like, and that's, oh man, that feels like another level of understanding. So
yeah,
if it feels awkward, keep at it.
Well, it's like you're building a team. I mean,
right.
You're once you've played with those people enough, you start to anticipate, and it makes a lot of things easier once you can kind of learn each other. Yeah,
it is so cool. It's like, holy cow, we're like some kind of nucleus, and like working together.
Well, Libby, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me today. This has been an awesome conversation.
Thank you so much, James. I am awestruck and super thankful for this opportunity. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate it. This was a blast.